I've got a collection of street magic and children's object lessons and knickknacks and novelties and icebreakers and masks. And we've all got used to wearing masks, and this one was given to me. So not my finest. But and I've got the big collection at home, but this is really my favourite of these. This is a Victorian era mask. So, and it does something for me, I think. It's a terrific mask, isn't it? And this is the more usual type of mask that you see, more for when we go to the balls in Venice, as we often do every year. Okay, so masks. That's our introduction to this topic of hypocrisy. Now, everyone's a hypocrite. Let's start there, starting here. One of the existential philosophers has an illustration about the waiter, that no one is born a waiter. When you get a job as a waiter, the first time you act in your job, you have to pretend, because you've never been a waiter before. What does a waiter do? What are they like? And so, but the person sitting at the table has no idea that it's your first time. They don't know you're pretending. And you pretend to be a waiter so many times, then at a certain point you forget that you're pretending and you actually are a waiter. And something like this happens when you become a Christian. The day after you become a Christian, you think, well, now, what do I do now? I'm supposed to be different. And so for a period, you're pretending until that becomes what you do naturally. Okay. With that, I don't want to lose anyone, okay? So if some of this alarms you at a certain point, just don't scream and run out, okay? As has happened before. Because we're not going to lose anyone. This is Roy Lichtenstein's portrayal, The Kiss, 1964. And oh, that's right. I'm now following that one. Okay, so here, this lovelorn, beautiful woman is saying, Roger, and he's saying, Abigail. But she's thinking, Claude. And he's thinking, Fiona. The Lord says, through Isaiah, these people come near to me with their mouth and honour me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship of me is made up only of rules taught by men. Now, the idea of kissing is actually at the basis of worship. In Greek, the word for worship is proskuneo, meaning kiss towards. And so in the Orthodox churches, which all stem from the Greek, kissing, an icon, is basic. This is, you enter a church, there's an icon, a holy icon, and you kiss the icon. That's worship. And who's to say whose hearts are right? We've been in Orthodox churches in different countries, and you see the people, they come in and they're very, very genuine and perhaps repentant, but who knows what people's hearts are. This is what Isaiah said. These people come near to me with their mouth and honour me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. Their worship of me is made up only of rules taught by men. So today, I want to speak about Jesus and the hypocrites, and I hope I get through it. Now, firstly, there's no word in Hebrew for hypocrite. Now, you'll know the Bible is in two main parts, the Old Testament, the New Testament. The Old Testament's pretty well all in Hebrew, and that's what Jewish people still speak this language. And there's no word for hypocrite in that language. So how did Rabbi Yeshua Jesus, pick up this Greek word, which he uses over and over. So it's all the vocabulary of Hebrew at his disposal, and that passage from Isaiah 29, but no actual word until he has this one Greek word which says it so precisely. Hypocrite. Now, this is my theory. You won't find it in any commentaries on the Bible. I think that Jesus picked this word up when he was walking with Mum and Dad from Egypt to Nazareth. This is one of my favourite paintings, Ansoul, La Fuite en Égypte, the flight to Egypt. And you see Mary absolutely spent and a glow coming from the baby, illuminating the Sphinx, which still has its nose. Here's poor old Joseph, he's had it. And they stayed there for how long? We're not quite sure, but they walked all the way from there back to their home in Nazareth. Okay, so here's the map of the journey. They started out in Bethlehem. They ran for their lives from Bethlehem, from Herod's advancing troops, and they got away to Egypt and stayed there some years. I think perhaps living off the proceeds of those gifts from the wise men from the east. And then when it was safe, they came back. Now, the way to come back is along the seashore. It's level. You don't go up into the hills. So this is the map of them walking up here till they get to the point where they have to go into the hills to get to Nazareth, which is in the hills. So along this road, they would have had to go past this town, Caesarea Maritima. Some of you may have been there if you've been to Israel. And the coast road, still there. You can just go straight up this coast road and end up in Nazareth, just following that map. Now look at some of the features here. This is where, that's the theatre, the Greek theatre. This is the hippodrome, the race course. And this is the outline of Herod's palace. He had a palace here and a pool, swimming pool. Hey, Man Pool, that's where they got the idea. Beautiful. That was his private pool. Okay, so this was quite a settlement. And the path would have just gone along here, over here, and they kept going north. So there's a closer one of the theatre and another angle. So you can see how many people would have been able to sit in this open-air theatre, and the actors would have all played on the stage down here and projected their voices, no microphones, up into the stands. Now, the toddler, the walking child Jesus, would have seen this and wondered about, I wonder if he saw this, the actors. Because the actors were signified by masks. And here are clay masks. And the Greek word for mask is hypocrisy, hypocrite. That is a hypocrite. And by transference, if you wore one of these, in common parlance, you would have been called a hypocrite, a wearer of a mask. Hypocrisy. And the open mouth there served as a kind of megaphone. So the mask signified the character you were playing, and one actor could have several of these masks, depending on which character. Oh yes, he picked that one up, he's a girl now, and he's got a high voice, which you hear through the mouthpiece in the mask. Hypocrisy. So I can imagine the child Jesus looking at this, thinking, brilliant word. They're all pretending to be something they're not. It's a play. And so he uses this word and links it to the passage in Isaiah. So the word hypocrite isn't in the Old Testament, but the idea is there. And now here he puts the word and the idea together. You hypocrites, as Brooke read for us, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you. These people honour me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are but rules taught by men. And those masks are now a symbol of laughing, and a crying mask is a symbol for the theatre, even today. This is a blowtorch. Now, I don't know if people still use these. They do. Great. You're looking at the bloke who uses it, not yourself, I hope. I can remember my father using a blowtorch when he was stripping off old paint before he put an undercoat on and put a new type of paint on. And what an instrument the blowtorch is. This is a more modern one. And sometimes you hear the expression that, oh, he put the blowtorch on the belly, like you're stripping old paint off humans. So that's an idea. Jesus takes a blowtorch to the Pharisees. The people he saw were masked. They were not who they claimed to be. And his use of this word, and as we go through some of the uses in Matthew, you'll see, wow, I'm glad I wasn't there when he was talking like this. That's the passage from Isaiah, and Matthew quotes it again and introduces the word hypocrite. Matthew 6, you'll know this one. Be careful not to do your acts of righteousness before men to be seen by them, but if you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honoured by men, so on. And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites. Wow, you can even pray with a mask. What a fine prayer that was. But was God listening to that prayer or seeing behind the mask? When you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by men. Hypocrites, that's Matthew 6. Matthew 22. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? They tried to trap Jesus. But Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, you hypocrites, you're trying it on me. The no-win outcome. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. You're hypocrites. You don't want to know the answer to this. You're playing a part. Why are you trying to trap me? You hypocrites. But Matthew 23, if you want to feel what a blowtorch is like, read this alone at home and get the inflection. See if you can get his tone of voice. Because it's not like we used to have in church, where here beginneth the first lesson, and he said unto them, blah, 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 blah. Here endeth the first lesson. That was the Bible. Oh no, that's not the Bible. This is the Bible. Jesus. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You shut the kingdom of heaven in men's faces. You yourselves do not enter, nor will you let those enter who are trying to. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to win a single convert, and when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as you are. You hypocrites! Wow, that stings. And if I were there, and if I were them, I would be demolished. Whoa, when is he going to finish with that blowtorch? Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You give a tenth of your spices, etc. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! And he goes on and on. You think, oh, please, no more. We've had enough. We get it. Blind Pharisee. First clean the inside of the cup and dish, then the outside also will be clean. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You are like whitewashed tombs. You snakes. You breed of vipers. Wow, this is gentle Jesus, meek and mild. Wow. Luke, indignant because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath. Healed! He'd healed someone on the Sabbath. Shouldn't they all be jumping up with joy? Oh no, tut tut, poor timing. This is the Sabbath, don't you know? The synagogue ruler said to the people, there are 6 days for work, so come and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath. Oh yes, I'll wait another day with my life-destroying illness, which Jesus can heal today. The Lord answered him, you hypocrites. Doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie his ox or donkey from the stall and lead it out to give it. Well, you do this for an animal, but you wouldn't do it for a human. That's sheer hypocrisy. What a part you are playing. To some who were confident of their own righteousness and looked down on everybody else, Jesus told this parable. Two men went up to the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood up and prayed about himself. God, I thank you that I'm not like other men, robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week and give a tenth of all I get. You can feel it all, can't you? I sometimes say to people, because they know I'm a retired pastor, I'll say, I prayed that morning prayer today. I don't know if you've ever prayed that morning prayer. No, and they think, oh gosh, there's a morning prayer. I've never prayed it. Yes, I prayed, thank you, Lord, that I have not shouted at the children. I have not sworn at the wife. I have not kicked the dog. But I am about to get out of bed. So here is the Pharisee and the tax collector. His poor bloke cowering at the back in the shadows, but the tax collector stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven, but beat his breast and said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. I tell you that this man, rather than the other, went home justified before God. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted. Make us to be what we profess to be. Let prayer be prayer, and praise be heartfelt praise. From unreality, they set us free, and let our words be echoed by our ways. Description of the early church. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts. They weren't faking it. Glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favour of all the people. The Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. Make us to be what we profess to be. Let prayer be prayer and praise be heartfelt praise. From unreality, those set us free, and let our words be echoed by our ways. You've heard this expression, the real McCoy. What is the real McCoy? Okay, well, you might not know that it's based on a Scottish whiskey from McCoy. Okay, 1844, White and Mackay, Glasgow, have made this whiskey, McCoy. Now, during Prohibition in the USA in the 30s, people who were heavy drinkers wanted proper Scotch whiskey. Well, it was hard to get because it was against the law. But the Canadians just across the border, some enterprising Canadians, bottled some cheap muck, put that label on and sold it as McCoy whiskey. It doesn't taste like the McCoy we used to have before Prohibition. It's not the real McCoy. Now, just crossing over here, there was a famous feud between the Hatfields and the McCoys, another family in Virginia. There's no connection really. This is a Larson cartoon of the fake McCoys. Here they are, just two-dimensional cut-out figures. But the real McCoy refers to anything that's genuine. So, I ask myself, am I the real McCoy or a cheap knockoff with a forged label? In Australia, we would say fair dinkum. This is a very common phrase, and if you've only recently arrived in Australia, you may not have heard it, and it may not mean anything to you. But to the inbred, to the, thank you, that woman. But to the long-standing Aussies, this expression, fair dinkum, is obvious. It means genuine or sincere. But the origin of it is a bit up in the air. How did it come to be? Well, there's been a bit of correspondence in the Herald over it, and this is one version, that it comes from the Midlands, the English Midlands, a dialect word meaning a fair day's work, meaning fair play. So fair dinkum, a fair day's work. That's one theory. Another theory is that it was coined on the Australian gold fields and comes from one of the Chinese dialects widely spoken at the diggings, din and cum, loosely translating as true gold. Maybe those who have a Chinese language ability can tell us this later if it's the case. So dinkum is genuine gold, true gold. So fair dinkum. Are you fair dinkum? Is it fair dinkum? Is it genuine? Is it pure gold? Is it fair play? This is the reconstructed Globe Theatre in London. This is how it was when Shakespeare put on his plays, and these plays are still wonderful classics. And in one of the plays, As You Like It, he has the quote, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. All the world's a stage." So we're all pretending here on a Sunday morning that we don't want to be in surf at Maroubra. Thanks for setting us up on that one, mate. If you meet an actor, how do you know if he's acting? Because some of them are very good at it. And for the politician, this is the aim. If you can fake sincerity, you've got it made. So fake sincerity, you'll make it in politics. In the early 50s, Marlon Brando was in the forefront of a new kind of acting. Not stylised, staged acting, but method acting, where you immerse yourself in the character you're playing. You become the character, and you don't go out of character. Even if you have a break and go across the road and have a cup of coffee, you're still in character, and you're going to punch the bloke if he doesn't do it on time. Method acting. So are they acting? So we're asking today, what is phony, fake, false, counterfeit, charlatan, quack? For many years, Hollywood operated under the rule that any minister of religion or priest could not be portrayed as immoral. So this was when Hollywood was sort of a clean image. But this film came out, Elmer Gantry, Burt Lancaster, one of my favourite actors as a child, and Gene Simmons. And he plays a tent evangelist who is a fiery preacher in the tent, but has it off with Gene Simmons when the crowds have gone. He's leading a double life. How did they do that? Oh, Elmer Gantry was not an ordained clergyman. He was just a good tonic salesman with a Bible in his hand. Elmer Gantry. Now, we've got used to this. Now the lid's blown off the hypocrites in our own society. Some of you might recognise this man on the cover of Time, Jimmy Swaggart. Won't go into why he was notorious. His notoriety was well earned, as were the other couple portrayed there. They played a part, and a lot of people fell for it. But that was 30 years ago. And I don't have the stomach to trawl through the more current examples of phony Christianity in our society, because it is so dishonouring to the name of Christ. So you ask two questions. One, are they fair dinkum? Now, this is a little child's thing. When you point your finger at someone, there are three fingers pointing back at you. Remember that. So when you ask, are they fair dinkum? Are they the real McCoy? Or are they acting? Remember, you're asking yourself 3 times as strong, am I the real McCoy? Am I acting? Then you ask, am I fair dinkum? And that's the thing. Man in the mirror. Look at the man in the mirror. And ask, am I fair dinkum? When we first went to the Barossa Valley, we were called into a pretty hefty case of that needed an exorcism of a property. And the man in the relationship had had angelic visitations, and he was very troubled for his soul. And so we knew a neighbour, and the neighbour called us in to help. So I went round to their house in the country, and the wife greeted me. All right, so have you had any experience of this sort of thing? I said, more than I ever wished to have. She said, that's good, because I want you to come in here and talk him out of all this nonsense. I said, okay, we'll see what happens. So she was very against it. He, in fact, made a commitment to Christ and was among the first people we baptised in the Old Union Chapel in Angaston. But during that interview, she said, I'm not going to any church. I've worked with people from church, and she named a particular church which is well known in our very highly churched area in the Barossa Valley. There is a social advantage to being in a church where we come from. There's none in Sydney. So she said, I know people who go to that church and they're hypocrites. Okay. Of course there are hypocrites there. There are hypocrites here. I'm a hypocrite. We're all hypocrites. But she's not going to a church because there's hypocrites there. So I said, well, look, imagine you're on the Titanic. The ship's gone down and you're in ice-cold water and you're going to die very soon. There's a lifeboat coming towards you. Saved. How wonderful. But as the lifeboat comes closer to you, and there are people already in the lifeboat and they're about to pick you up, but you recognise some of the people in that lifeboat and you know they're hypocrites. I'm not getting in that lifeboat. She thought about it and then she said to me, you're good. I said, I've been doing this for many years. You're not getting in the lifeboat because there's hypocrites in it. It's still a lifeboat. It is still our Lord's means. However it's been infiltrated and compromised, it is still his means of introducing people to himself and preparing them for eternity in heaven. I'm getting in the lifeboat. I don't care who else is in there. And I hope they don't go home and think, oh, he was in our church today and he's a hypocrite. I was a church phony, as I've shared with you over the years. When I grew up in the Methodist Church, I was kicked out of there when I was 16 for very good reason, and I became a Presbyterian. And I was almost kicked out of there, but a long story. I was living a double life, so I know what this is all about. You live one way on a Sunday and another way on a Saturday, until you can't do it anymore, and it's one or the other. I dealt with a man who was about to leave his wife a long time ago, and he'd found a prettier, younger, more nubile version, and so he was going to leave the church, leave his wife and family, and go with this woman. Now, I visited him in an apartment he was staying in briefly, alone, and I said to him, as a prophet of God, as I was at the door about to leave, I turned and said to him, this is the word of the Lord to you. I love you. I sent my son to die for you. I want you to love me in return. But it's me or her. Our God is a jealous God. Some of you may know this lovely child's story, The Velveteen Rabbit, or how toys become real. The skin horse had lived longer in the nursery than any of the others. He was so old that his brown coat was bald in patches and showed the seams underneath, and most of the hairs in his tail had been pulled out to string bead necklaces. He was wise, for he had seen a long succession of mechanical toys arrive to boast and swagger and by break their mainsprings and pass away. And he knew that they were only toys and would never turn into anything else. For nursery magic is very strange and wonderful, and only those playthings that are old and wise and experienced, like the skin horse, understand all about it. What is real? Asked the rabbit one day, when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came to tidy the room. Does it mean having things that buzz inside you and a stick-out handle? Real isn't how you were made, said the skin horse. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. When you are real, you don't mind being hurt. Does it happen all at once, like being wound up? He asked, or bit by bit? It doesn't happen all at once, said the skin horse. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily or have sharp edges or who have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. I suppose you are real, said the rabbit. Then he wished he had not said it, for he thought the skin horse might be sensitive. But the skin horse only smiled. The boy's uncle made me real, he said. That was a great many years ago. But once you are real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts for always. The rabbit sighed. He thought it would be a long time before this magic called real happened to him. He longed to become real, to know what it felt like. I suppose you are real, said the rabbit. He longed to become real, to know what it felt like. Is that what you bring to this Sunday? You want to be real. Not perfect, real. Malcolm Muggeridge became a Christian later in life. He'd lived a fairly adventurous life as a spy and the editor of a newspaper in England. Then he became a Christian and was real. And he was asked, how do you make Christian television? And he gave a wonderful answer. How do you make Christian television? To use this medium to convince people of who Jesus really is, convince them to follow him, use mass marketing to get the message out. How do you make Christian television? He said, find a true Christian and put them in front of the camera. How easy would that be? How easy would that be? How hard would that be? Find a true Christian and put them in front of a camera. And that's what he did. When he went to India to make a film about this Albanian nun. An Albanian nun who had gone to India and seen the poverty, seen people die in the street and no one cared. They just stepped over their body. And her ministry was to go out each day with her helpers and find the people who were nearly dead on the street and carry them back to the hospice where they were cleaned up, fed, and given a comfortable place to die. Wow, that's a marketing strategy. That should bring the crowds in. Let's go out and find nearly dead people. Something Beautiful for God was the name of the film that he made about a woman who was a bit more than an Albanian peasant, and the church of which she was a member have so honoured her as to make her a saint in their terminology, Mother Teresa. Today, and as we approach the Lord's table, I want to address your conscience and mine, not to alarm you, unless you need to be alarmed. If you're one of those Pharisee hypocrites, be alarmed, because the blowtorch is just under that table. But if you're real, if you're fair dinkum, true, honest, genuine, sincere, then you're in the right place. You're with other fallen human beings who have been touched by the Spirit of Jesus Christ and lifted out of the muck. He blows on them, makes them clean, blows his life, his breath into their spirit, makes them alive. They're still human, but they're real. The real McCoy, fair dinkum. These people come near to me with their mouth and honour me with their lips. Their hearts are far from me. Doesn't matter what you say. Get your heart close to the Lord Jesus today.